Sofia, Bulgaria's largest city, is one of Europe's oldest capitals. So they've had plenty of time to build some stadiums. Let's see how they did. Here are the stadiums and arenas of Sofia, Bulgaria. Stadion Georgi Asparuhov. This place gets referred to by the locals as Gerena, which means floodplain. You're probably thinking that it gets that name because the ground is known to flood, but actually it's named for the neighbourhood in which it's located, which is known to flood. But I'm sure the drainage at this ground is adequate, as it has been renovated as recently as 2016. Interestingly, this ground holds the record for the longest undefeated streak at home by any club in Bulgarian football. Levski Sofia went 203 matches over 18 years without losing here. That record does seem almost unbelievable, but it is slightly less impressive when you realise that they played their local derbies at another ground. To be specific, they played them at Vasilevsky National Stadium, which was and still is the largest stadium in the country. It also still does often host the local derbies, including what is known as the Eternal Derby, contested between Levski and CSKA, a rivalry that often gets heated. In fact, at this ground in 1985, there were so many fights on and off the pitch that the Communist Party decided to disband the two clubs and ban 6 players for life. Those bans were later overturned. Anyway, whilst the previous stadium was named after a famous footballer, Vasilevsky is actually a revolutionary who played a key role in Bulgaria gaining independence from the Ottoman Empire, although he was actually executed by the Ottomans in Sofia before that eventuated. So that name is certainly a lot more meaningful than having your national stadium named after a bank or something. Nearby is Stadion Bulgarska Armia, home to the Central Sports Club of the Army, CSKA, one of the country's biggest clubs. The quality of this stadium doesn't really reflect that fact though. In 2022, I actually walked straight past it thinking it was completely abandoned. That wasn't the case then, but after years of decay and sections of the stadium being closed off to spectators, it is now completely closed and will be demolished. A new 16,000 seat stadium is set to be built on the same site. There will almost certainly be less rats at this stadium. Arena Sofia is the biggest and almost certainly the best arena in the city. It's mainly tennis and volleyball that takes place here in terms of sports, but it of course hosts plenty of non-sporting events as well. About a quarter of the capacity is coming from movable seating, so it can host tennis on a Monday, volleyball on a Thursday, and then the seating can retract to allow it to host, monster trucks on a Saturday. It's a solid venue all round, although that video board is comparatively small. But I guess I'm comparing that to American standards, and I shouldn't. Everything's bigger in America, except for the number of Bulgarian speakers, of course. Stadion Lokomotiv. It looks like the builders went on strike during construction and just didn't finish the job. But that's fitting, I suppose. It's Stadion Lokomotiv, and locomotive workers are known to go on strike from time to time. But in all seriousness, the stadium does have an unusual design. However, it does make a potential future expansion a fairly simple proposition. Not that they'll likely need it. The average attendance here is around, well, I don't have the figures, but they don't often sell out. Bizarrely, when Kylie Minogue held a concert here back in 2008, she didn't perform the song Locomotion. It's not a good song or anything, but it would make sense, would it not? Winter Sports Palace. Hang on, that doesn't sound very Bulgarian. What do locals call it? Zimen Zvorets na Sporta. Yeah, that's more like it. This is basically the home of ice hockey in Bulgaria, as it's home to several top tier clubs and of course the national team. Not only that, but it hosts some of the less popular, less violent ice sports, like figure skating, although I don't think Nancy Kerrigan would agree that it's less violent. There are actually 2 rinks within the venue, so I think the Winter Sports Palace is a pretty appropriate name. It's a big building. The ceiling has a unique design, come to think of it. It's like there are a bunch of boardwalks up there. Oh, and I take back what I said earlier. Arena Sofia's video boards are comparatively huge. Stadion Academic. It gets that name because the club that originally played here was founded by a group of students from the nearby Sofia University. Despite spending most of the 70s in the top division, the club just kept getting relegated until they folded over 10 years ago, after experiencing financial problems. The club that plays here now is an unofficial amateur Phoenix club that uses the same logo. So, given that recent history, it's not all that surprising that, as of today, the stadium is in pretty poor shape. That's a billboard, not a video board, by the way. Like a couple we saw earlier, Stadion Alexander Shalamanov is situated in a leafy park. This one's called Slavia Park. It also includes a couple of very small indoor arenas. Much like the Army Stadium, this too is set to be rebuilt, although they said that back in 2014. 10 years on, nothing's happened, so it might be looking like this for a while. To be honest, I'm kinda glad they haven't built a modern stadium in its place, because not only does the backdrop of the park's trees make for a serene setting, but also, it might be outdated, but this clock scoreboard combination adds a lot of charm to the ground. The clock hands almost look as if they're made from uranium glass or something. They're almost glowing. Stadion Rakovski. Rakovski was yet another Bulgarian revolutionary, who was also sentenced to death by the Ottomans, but he actually managed to escape. At first glance, you might be thinking that this is yet another closed stadium, but no, it's still in use. It's just that it's home to a third-tier club, the predecessor of which went bankrupt in 2015, so they probably don't attract a huge crowd. Still, there only seems like there are just a few areas of the stands where you could actually sit without requiring a tetanus shot. Perhaps they slid a few levs into the palms of the safety inspectors. I don't know. There's also an arena called Universiada Hall. Very little information is available about this place, or if there is, it's in a dusty filing cabinet in some government building in Sofia, one that I currently don't have access to. So I can only go by what I do know. I know that it looks very vintage in here. Lots of wooden panels on show. I can also imagine how it smells. Kinda like an antique store. You know, a bit of linseed oil, some mothballs. That's all. And those were the Stadiums of Sofia, the city with a girl's name. Please consider subscribing if you're new around here. Thanks for watching, have a good one.